Shark encounters often begin as serene moments at sea, until a sudden shadow beneath the waves turns calm into chaos. These apex predators have rammed yachts, mauled surfers, and dragged unsuspecting swimmers into deep blue nightmares. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling encounters that reveal just how fast safety can vanish when the ocean strikes back. From a luxury yacht torn apart in South Africa's False Bay, to divers clinging to a shattered cage off Guadalupe Island, these stories expose the razor's edge between adventure and terror. The pristine waters of Gansbaai, South Africa, stretched endlessly under the scorching summer sun on July 25, 2025. This particular stretch of coastline had earned its reputation as one of the world's premier great white shark territories, with the nutrient-rich waters attracting massive populations of seals that served as the apex predator's primary food source. Its unique geography, with its deep channels and rocky outcrops, created perfect hunting grounds for sharks that could reach lengths exceeding 20 feet. Markus Schneider, a successful German automotive executive, had spared no expense on his family's South African vacation. The gleaming white yacht Serendipity, worth $3 million and measuring 65 feet from bow to stern, represented the pinnacle of luxury marine engineering. Equipped with state-of-the-art navigation systems, a full galley, and spacious guest quarters, the vessel had been chartered specifically for this once-in-a-lifetime shark viewing expedition. Markus stood at the helm alongside his wife, Claudia, a renowned art curator from Munich, as they watched their teenage children prepare for what they believed would be a safe observation experience. Lucas, 17 and an aspiring marine photographer, adjusted his expensive underwater camera equipment while his younger sister Amelia, 15 and fascinated by marine biology, studied a field guide to South African shark species. The yacht's 2 experienced crew members, Captain Hendrik Fourie and first mate Willem Botha, had assured the family that their planned route would provide spectacular wildlife viewing while maintaining a respectful distance from known shark aggregation sites. The morning had proceeded flawlessly, with the family spotting several bronze whaler sharks and a pod of dolphins. The crew had positioned the yacht approximately 2 nautical miles off the coast of Gansbaai, where thriving colonies of Cape Fur seals created a natural buffet that once attracted great whites throughout the year. Captain Fourie explained that this distance provided optimal viewing opportunities while ensuring passenger safety, as sharks typically remained closer to their primary hunting grounds. At precisely 11:30 that morning, the tranquil scene transformed into absolute chaos. A massive great white shark, later estimated at 20 feet in length and weighing over 2 tons, emerged from the depths with explosive force. Marine biologists would later theorize that the shark had been tracking a wounded seal when the yacht's hull disrupted its pursuit, triggering an aggressive territorial response. The initial impact sent violent tremors throughout the vessel, as the shark's massive body collided with the port side hull. The force of the strike, equivalent to a small automobile accident, immediately compromised the yacht's structural integrity. The beautifully crafted bow railing, constructed from premium marine-grade aluminum, crumpled like paper under the shark's assault. Sections of the teak decking splintered and buckled, creating dangerous debris that scattered across the previously immaculate surface. Within seconds of the initial collision, seawater began flooding the lower cabin through multiple stress fractures in the hull. The yacht's sophisticated bilge pump system, designed to handle minor leaks, proved completely inadequate against the massive influx of ocean water. Emergency alarms blared throughout the vessel as electrical systems began failing, leaving the family trapped aboard a rapidly sinking luxury yacht. The shark's subsequent attack proved even more devastating than its initial assault. In the confusion following the collision, both Lucas and Amelia had been thrown from their secure positions near the stern. The yacht's sudden listing motion, combined with the violent rolling caused by the shark's continued ramming, sent both teenagers tumbling over the damaged railing into the shark-infested waters. Lucas surfaced first, his expensive camera equipment dragging him down as he struggled to stay afloat. The great white, still in an aggressive state, immediately identified the splashing teenager as potential prey. Its massive jaws, lined with razor-sharp triangular teeth, clamped down on Lucas's left leg with bone-crushing force. The boy's screams echoed across the water as the shark's serrated teeth penetrated muscle and scraped against bone. Amelia, surfacing nearby, witnessed her brother's attack with absolute terror. The shark, unsatisfied with its first victim, released Lucas and immediately targeted the younger girl. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water with frightening speed as it lunged toward Amelia, its massive jaws snapping at her desperately flailing arms. The teenager managed to pull her limb away just as the shark's teeth scraped against her forearm, leaving deep lacerations that immediately began bleeding profusely. Marcus, witnessing his children's life-threatening situation, abandoned all personal safety concerns and dove directly into the blood-stained water. The businessman, despite having no combat training or experience with marine predators, positioned himself between the massive shark and his injured children. He grabbed both Lucas and Amelia, attempting to shield them with his own body while simultaneously trying to drag them toward the yacht's emergency ladder. The great white, now fully committed to its attack, began circling the family with increasing aggression. Its dark eyes, perfectly adapted for hunting in murky water, focused intently on the struggling humans. The shark's powerful tail created massive swells that made swimming nearly impossible, while its continued presence prevented any immediate rescue attempts. Claudia, watching helplessly from the tilting yacht, remembered the emergency flare gun stored in the bridge's safety compartment. Despite her terror, she managed to retrieve the device and ignite a bright red flare directly at the shark's head. The sudden burst of intense light and chemical smoke temporarily stunned the massive predator, causing it to retreat just far enough for Marcus and the crew members to haul both injured teenagers back aboard the damaged vessel. The yacht's sophisticated communication and navigation systems had been completely destroyed by seawater infiltration, leaving the family stranded without any means of calling for assistance. Captain Forey managed to deploy the vessel's emergency beacon, hoping that nearby maritime rescue services would detect their distress signal before the yacht sank completely. Rescue boats arrived approximately 45 minutes later, finding the Schneider family aboard their partially submerged luxury yacht. Both Lucas and Amelia required immediate medical attention for severe shark bite injuries, but all family members had survived their encounter with one of the ocean's most formidable predators. The incident served as a stark reminder that even the most expensive safety equipment cannot guarantee protection from nature's unpredictable power. The remote coastline of Western Australia near Esperance had long been recognized as one of the continent's most pristine surfing destinations. In March 2019, the area's crystal-clear waters and consistent swells attracted surfers from around the globe, despite local warnings about increased shark activity. The region's unique underwater topography, featuring deep channels that allowed large pelagic species to venture close to shore, created ideal hunting grounds for tiger sharks during their autumn migration patterns. Rafael Costa, a 27-year-old professional surfer from Salvador, Brazil, had traveled to this isolated stretch of coastline specifically to experience the legendary waves that broke over ancient reef formations. The athlete had spent the previous week camping along the rugged shoreline, documenting his surfing sessions for sponsors back in Brazil. His girlfriend, Sofia Mendes, a marine photography student from Rio de Janeiro, accompanied him on the expedition to capture underwater footage of the region's diverse marine ecosystem. On the afternoon of March 15, 2019, Rafael paddled out during what locals called the golden hour, when late-day sun illuminated the reef structures beneath the surface. The surf conditions appeared perfect, with consistent 4-foot swells rolling in from the Southern Ocean. Sophia positioned herself approximately 50 meters away on her own surfboard, adjusting her underwater camera housing while keeping a watchful eye on her boyfriend's surfing session. The reef system beneath them extended nearly 200 meters offshore, creating a complex maze of channels and drop-offs that supported abundant marine life. Schools of yellowtail kingfish moved through the deeper sections, while smaller reef fish clustered around coral formations closer to the surface. This rich ecosystem regularly attracted larger predators, including the tiger sharks that migrated along Australia's southern coast during the autumn months. Rafael had successfully ridden 3 waves when he noticed unusual activity in the water around him. Large shadows moved beneath his board, and the smaller fish that typically inhabited the reef had suddenly disappeared. Experienced surfers in shark-prone waters often recognize these warning signs, but Rafael's focus remained fixed on catching the next perfect wave rather than potential marine threats. At approximately 5:15 that evening, as Rafael positioned himself for what would become his final wave of the session, a massive tiger shark struck from directly below. The predator, later estimated at 14 feet in length, had been stalking the surfer for several minutes before launching its attack. Tiger sharks, known for their opportunistic hunting behavior and powerful bite force, often mistake surfboards and their riders for large marine animals when viewed from below. The shark's initial assault targeted Raphael's left leg as he sat on his surfboard waiting for the next set. Its massive jaws, equipped with curved, serrated teeth designed for cutting through tough prey, clamped down with devastating force. The impact knocked Raphael from his board as the shark's powerful body thrashed violently, attempting to drag its perceived prey underwater. Raphael's years of athletic training proved crucial during the terrifying encounter. Despite the excruciating pain and shock of the attack, he managed to strike the shark's sensitive snout with his free leg while simultaneously attempting to pry its jaws open with both hands. The tiger shark, frustrated by its prey's resistance, released its grip momentarily before immediately launching a second attack. The predator's second assault proved even more devastating than its initial strike. The shark's jaws targeted Raphael's right leg, its teeth penetrating deep into muscle tissue as the animal attempted to incapacitate its victim. Blood poured into the surrounding water, creating a crimson cloud that only seemed to intensify the shark's aggressive behavior. Sophia witnessed the entire attack from her position 50 meters away. Despite her terror and the obvious danger of approaching an actively feeding shark, she paddled directly toward the scene. Her actions would later be credited with saving Raphael's life, as her presence and shouting seemed to distract the predator long enough for Raphael to break free from its grip. The tiger shark, perhaps confused by the presence of a second human, circled the area for several more minutes before disappearing into the deeper water beyond the reef. Sophia managed to reach Raphael, who was barely conscious from blood loss and shock. She positioned him across her surfboard and began the desperate paddle toward shore, knowing that immediate medical attention would determine whether he survived the encounter. Local emergency responders met them at the beach, where paramedics immediately began treating Raphael's severe injuries. Both legs had sustained massive trauma, with deep puncture wounds and tissue damage that would ultimately require amputation. An emergency helicopter transported him to a hospital, where trauma surgeons worked throughout the night to stabilize his condition. Raphael's survival, though he lost both legs, demonstrated the importance of immediate response during shark attacks. Sophia's courage in approaching an active attack scene, combined with rapid emergency medical care, prevented what could have been a fatal encounter. The incident highlighted the unpredictable nature of tiger sharks and the risks inherent in surfing remote Australian coastlines during migration periods. The rugged limestone cliffs of Baja California, Mexico rose dramatically from turquoise waters that had attracted thrill-seekers for decades. In August 2018, this remote stretch of coastline near La Paz offered perfect conditions for cliff jumping, with deep channels carved by centuries of wave action providing safe landing zones for adventurous tourists. The area's unique geology created underwater caverns and drop-offs that supported diverse marine ecosystems, including the bull sharks that frequented these waters during their summer feeding season. Marco Ricci, a 22-year-old adventure sports enthusiast from Naples, Italy, had traveled to Baja California specifically to experience the region's legendary cliff jumping opportunities. The engineering student had spent previous summers scaling mountains across Europe, but Mexico's dramatic coastline offered an entirely different type of adrenaline rush. His group of 6 friends, all fellow university students, had rented a small villa overlooking the cliffs for their 2-week vacation. The limestone formations along this section of coast reached heights exceeding 40 feet above sea level, with centuries of erosion creating natural platforms at various elevations. Local guides had identified several jumping points that provided adequate water depth while minimizing risks from submerged rocks or coral formations. The crystal-clear water typically allowed jumpers to assess conditions before leaping, though deeper channels often remained shrouded in blue-green shadows. On the morning of August 23, 2018, Marco and his companions hiked to their favorite jumping spot, a 30-foot cliff that offered spectacular views of the Sea of Cortez. The previous day's jumping session had proceeded without incident, building their confidence in the location's safety. Marco's friends positioned themselves at various vantage points along the cliff face, some preparing to jump while others documented the experience with waterproof cameras. The waters below appeared deceptively calm, with gentle swells rolling in from the open sea. Marine life in the area included schools of tropical fish, sea turtles, and occasional dolphins that delighted tourists throughout the summer months. However, the region's bull sharks remained largely invisible to surface observers, as these powerful predators typically hunted in deeper water during daylight hours. Bull sharks, known for their aggressive territorial behavior and ability to thrive in both saltwater and brackish environments, frequently used the area's underwater canyons as hunting corridors. These apex predators, reaching lengths of 11 feet and weights exceeding 400 pounds, possessed one of the strongest bite forces in the shark kingdom. Their broad, flat snouts and stocky build made them perfectly adapted for close-quarters combat with prey. Marco executed his jump from the cliff's highest platform at approximately 10:30 that morning. His athletic background in gymnastics allowed him to maintain proper form during the 3-second fall, entering the water feet first to minimize impact. The limestone cliff's shadow created a dark zone beneath the surface, where visibility dropped significantly despite the water's overall clarity. The bull shark that attacked Marco had been hunting in the deeper channel adjacent to the jumping area. The massive predator, later estimated at 10 feet in length, likely interpreted the sudden splash and movement as a wounded marine animal entering its territory. Bull sharks' aggressive nature and territorial instincts often trigger attacks on anything that appears vulnerable or threatening within their domain. Marco's collision with the water triggered an immediate response from the shark, which had been lurking approximately 15 feet below the surface. The predator launched itself upward with explosive force, its powerful tail propelling its muscular body toward what it perceived as easy prey. The shark's timing proved nearly perfect, intercepting Marco just as he reached maximum depth from his jump. The initial strike targeted Marco's right forearm as he instinctively raised his hands to protect his face. The bull shark's massive jaws, equipped with triangular serrated teeth designed for crushing bone, clamped down with devastating force. The impact drove Marco deeper underwater while the shark's thrashing motion disoriented him completely. Marco's survival instincts overcame his shock and pain as he realized the severity of his situation. Despite being underwater and dealing with a 400-pound predator attached to his arm, he managed to strike the shark's eye with his free hand. Bull sharks, while extremely aggressive, often release prey that demonstrates significant resistance or poses potential injury to their own sensory organs. The predator's second attack proved more terrifying than its initial assault. As Marco struggled toward the surface, the bull shark repositioned itself and launched at his face, its jaws snapping inches from his nose and eyes. Only Marco's desperate backward movement prevented catastrophic facial injuries, though the shark's teeth left deep lacerations across his cheek and jaw. His friends on the cliff immediately recognized the emergency and began throwing anything available into the water. Backpacks, water bottles, and rocks rained down around the attack site, creating enough disturbance to confuse the shark's sensory systems. The bull shark, faced with multiple stimuli and an increasingly resistant victim, abandoned its attack and disappeared into the deeper water. Marco's companions managed to guide him to a small rocky outcropping where he could exit the water safely. His injuries required immediate evacuation to La Paz's main hospital, where plastic surgeons spent hours reconstructing his damaged forearm and repairing facial lacerations. The attack highlighted the hidden dangers present even in seemingly safe recreational areas. The coastal waters off Gansbaai, South Africa, had earned worldwide recognition as the Great White Shark Capital of the World by October 2016. This particular stretch of the Western Cape shoreline, where the warm Agulhas Current meets the cold Benguela Current, created nutrient-rich conditions that supported massive populations of Cape fur seals. The resulting ecosystem attracted great white sharks of extraordinary size, some reaching lengths exceeding 20 feet and weights approaching 3 tons. Jonas van der Merwe, a third-generation commercial fisherman from the nearby town of Klein Bay, had been working these waters for over 30 years. The 45-year-old Afrikaner operated a small fleet of traditional fishing boats, supplying local restaurants with fresh line fish caught using methods passed down through his family. His intimate knowledge of local currents, seasonal patterns, and marine behavior had earned him respect among the tight-knit fishing community. On the morning of October 12, 2016, Jonas departed his home port before dawn, as was his custom during the autumn months when yellowtail and snook moved closer to shore. The weather conditions appeared ideal for fishing, with light winds and minimal swell creating perfect visibility in the typically turbulent waters. His boat, the Sweeter Cruise, a 30-foot wooden vessel built by his father in 1978, had weathered countless storms and provided reliable service throughout Jonas's career. The area where Jonas planned to deploy his nets lay approximately 4 nautical miles southwest of Dyer Island, a rocky outcrop that served as a breeding colony for over 50,000 Cape fur seals. The island's strategic location created natural hunting corridors that great whites used to ambush seals, traveling between feeding areas and their terrestrial rookery. Local fishermen had long avoided setting nets too close to these shark highways, though the boundaries between safe and dangerous zones remained fluid and unpredictable. 2 days earlier, authorities had received reports of missing European tourists last seen during a diving expedition near Dyer Island. Heinrich Stabenforth, a 34-year-old marine engineer from Hamburg, Germany, and his companion Astrid Lindberg, a 28-year-old photographer from Stockholm, Sweden, had booked a cage diving tour with a local operator. The couple had been experienced divers with advanced certifications, making their disappearance particularly puzzling to search and rescue teams. The commercial diving operation had reported that both tourists had completed their scheduled cage diving session without incident. However, Heinrich and Astrid had requested permission to conduct a brief free-swimming dive outside the protective cage, hoping to photograph great whites in their natural environment. Despite the dive operator's warnings about the extreme dangers involved, both tourists had signed additional liability waivers and entered the water with full scuba equipment. Jonas began deploying his first set of nets at approximately 6:15 that morning, working methodically through his established fishing routine. The nets, designed to catch schooling fish in the middle water column, extended nearly 200 meters in length and dropped to depths exceeding 30 meters. His sonar equipment indicated promising fish activity in the area, with large schools of yellowtail moving through the underwater canyon systems. At 7:30, as Jonas began hauling in his first net of the day, he immediately noticed unusual resistance that suggested something far larger than his intended catch had become entangled. The hydraulic winch on the Sweeter cruise strained against the unexpected weight, forcing Jonas to reduce hauling speed to prevent damage to his equipment. His initial assumption was that a large ray or a small whale had accidentally swum into the net during the night. The massive great white shark that emerged from the depths exceeded anything Jonas had encountered during his 3 decades of fishing. The female specimen, later measured at 18 feet and estimated to weigh over 2 tons, had become thoroughly entangled in the commercial fishing net. More disturbing than the shark's impressive size was its grotesquely distended abdomen, which appeared swollen far beyond normal proportions. Jonas immediately recognized that the shark's condition was abnormal, as even well-fed great whites maintained relatively streamlined body profiles. The predator's belly appeared to contain something substantial, creating bulges and protrusions that suggested recent consumption of unusually large prey. As Jonas maneuvered his boat for a closer examination, he noticed what appeared to be fabric and possibly human skin protruding from a tear in the shark's abdominal wall. The discovery of human remains inside the shark prompted Jonas to immediately contact the authorities using his boat's emergency radio. Coast Guard vessels arrived at the scene within 45 minutes, accompanied by marine biologists who specialized in great white shark research. The entire shark was carefully transported to shore for detailed examination. The necropsy conducted by Dr. Sarah Mackenzie and her research team revealed the partially digested remains of both missing tourists, still contained within the shark's stomach cavity. Heinrich Stabenforth's remains included fragments of his diving mask and regulator, while Astrid Lindberg's camera equipment remained partially intact despite significant acid damage. Both victims showed evidence of massive trauma consistent with great white shark attacks. Forensic analysis suggested that the attack had occurred approximately 48 hours before the shark's discovery, coinciding with the tourists' disappearance. The investigation revealed that both divers had been consumed during a single feeding event, indicating the shark had attacked them while they swam together outside their protective cage. The incident served as a grim reminder of the risks associated with unprotected diving in great white shark territory. The Gulf Stream waters off Florida's Atlantic coast provided some of the world's premier deep-sea fishing opportunities during the summer months of 2022. These nutrient-rich currents, flowing northward from the Caribbean, supported vast populations of pelagic species, including bluefin tuna, marlin, and the short-fin mako sharks that hunted in the open ocean's blue depths. The area's unique oceanographic conditions, where warm tropical waters met cooler Atlantic currents, created feeding zones that attracted both commercial and recreational fishing fleets. Alejandro Morales, a 35-year-old charter boat captain from Miami, had been guiding fishing expeditions in these waters for over 15 years. The Cuban-American angler operated a 42-foot sport fishing vessel called Conquistador, equipped with state-of-the-art fish-finding electronics and heavy tackle, designed for battling the ocean's largest predators. His reputation for locating trophy-sized game fish had earned him a loyal clientele among serious sport fishermen. On June 18, 2022, Alejandro departed Government Cut Marina before dawn with 3 experienced anglers aboard for a full-day bluefin tuna charter. The group had specifically requested to fish the deep-water drop-offs approximately 30 miles offshore, where massive schools of skipjack tuna and flying fish created feeding frenzies that attracted larger predatory species. Weather conditions appeared perfect, with light southeast winds and minimal wave action allowing for precise boat positioning over productive fishing grounds. The area they planned to target lay along the continental shelf's edge, where depths dropped from 200 feet to over 1,000 feet within a few miles. This underwater topography created upwelling currents that brought nutrient-rich deep water toward the surface, supporting the complex food webs that sustained the region's remarkable biodiversity. Short-fin mako sharks, the ocean's fastest sharks capable of speeds exceeding 40 miles per hour, regularly patrolled these productive feeding zones. By mid-morning, the fishing had exceeded all expectations. The anglers had successfully landed several yellowfin tuna and were preparing to target the larger bluefin schools that appeared on the boat's sonar screen. Alejandro positioned the Conquistador over a promising underwater structure while his clients rigged heavy tackle with large live baits designed to attract trophy-sized fish. Short-fin mako sharks, distinguished by their streamlined bodies and incredible speed, were known to occasionally target fishing boats that had hooked large tuna. These apex predators, reaching lengths of 12 feet and weights exceeding 500 pounds, possessed extraordinary acceleration capabilities that allowed them to launch themselves completely out of the water during feeding attacks. Their torpedo-shaped bodies and powerful crescent-shaped tails made them perfectly designed for high-speed pursuit of fast-moving prey. At approximately 11:15 that morning, one of the anglers hooked what initially appeared to be a substantial bluefin tuna. The fish's initial run stripped nearly 300 yards of line from the reel before the angler managed to establish some control over the battle. Alejandro began maneuvering the boat to assist in the fight, following standard procedures for dealing with large pelagic species in deep water. The massive short-fin mako that had been stalking the hooked tuna exploded from the depths with devastating force. The 12-foot predator launched itself completely out of the water, its sleek blue-gray body gleaming in the morning sunlight as it flew through the air toward the boat's transom. The shark's incredible speed and timing suggested it had been tracking the struggling tuna from below before deciding to intercept the easy meal. Alejandro, who was leaning over the boat's gunwale to assist with landing the fish, found himself directly in the airborne shark's path. The mako's massive jaws, equipped with razor-sharp pointed teeth designed for gripping fast-moving prey, clamped down on his right forearm with crushing force. The impact of the 500-pound shark striking the boat sent both predator and victim crashing against the cockpit's deck. The attack's ferocity exceeded anything the experienced captain had encountered during his years of offshore fishing. The mako's teeth penetrated deep into the muscle tissue of his forearm, while its powerful body thrashed violently on the boat's deck. Blood poured from the wounds as Alejandro struggled to free himself from the shark's grip, while simultaneously trying to avoid its snapping jaws. His crew members reacted immediately to the emergency, grabbing gaffs and other boat equipment to drive the shark away from the other captain. The mako's incredible strength and violent thrashing made a close approach extremely dangerous, as its powerful tail could easily break bones or knock someone overboard. One crew member managed to strike the shark's sensitive nose with a gaff handle, causing it to momentarily release its grip on Alejandro's arm. The injured captain managed to roll away from the shark as it continued thrashing on the deck, its gills pumping desperately as it struggled to return to the water. The mako's incredible athletic ability allowed it to propel itself across the cockpit's fiberglass surface, snapping its jaws at anything within range while seeking an escape route back to the ocean. After several terrifying minutes, the crew managed to guide the shark toward the boat's transom. where it slipped back into the Gulf Stream's blue waters and disappeared into the depths. Alejandro's injuries required immediate medical attention, with deep puncture wounds and tissue damage that would require extensive surgical repair and months of rehabilitation. The encounter highlighted the unpredictable nature of short-fin mako sharks and the risks inherent in offshore fishing activities. Despite their reputation as open ocean predators that rarely interact with humans, makos possess the speed and power to create dangerous situations when attracted to fishing operations. The remote volcanic island of Guadalupe, located approximately 150 miles off the coast of Baja California, Mexico, had become world-renowned as the premier destination for great white shark cage diving by October 2021. The island's unique geography, featuring deep water channels that allowed massive sharks to approach within meters of the surface, created unparalleled opportunities for close encounters with these apex predators. The surrounding waters supported populations of great whites that included some of the largest specimens ever documented. Thomas Berger, a 31-year-old underwater photographer from Vancouver, Canada, had traveled to Guadalupe Island specifically to capture images of great white sharks for a documentary project about marine apex predators. The former commercial diver turned wildlife photographer had spent years documenting dangerous marine species, but great whites remained the ultimate challenge for his specialized underwater photography career. His partner, Elena Novak, a marine biology graduate student from Prague, Czech Republic, accompanied him to provide scientific context for the documentary project. The expedition vessel Deep Blue Explorer, a converted research ship operated by experienced shark diving professionals, had been conducting cage diving operations around Guadalupe Island for over a decade. The ship's crew included marine biologists who studied great white behavior patterns and migration routes, using the commercial diving operations to fund their research activities. Their extensive database of individual shark identification photographs had contributed significantly to the scientific understanding of great white populations. October represented peak season for great white activity around Guadalupe Island, as adult sharks arrived from their deep ocean feeding grounds to take advantage of the island's abundant seal populations. The volcanic island supported over 15,000 Guadalupe fur seals, a species that had recovered from near extinction, and now provided a concentrated food source that attracted sharks from across the eastern Pacific Ocean. On the morning of October 8, 2021, Thomas and Elena descended in a reinforced steel cage designed to provide photographers with unobstructed views, while maintaining complete protection from shark attacks. The cage measured 8 feet in height and 6 feet in width, with openings between the bars sized specifically to prevent shark penetration, while allowing camera equipment to extend outside the protective barrier. The waters surrounding the cage reached depths exceeding 3,000 feet, creating the deep blue background that made Guadalupe Island famous among underwater photographers. Visibility typically exceeded 100 feet in these pristine waters, allowing divers to spot approaching sharks from considerable distances. The cage was positioned at a depth of 40 feet, where great whites frequently cruised while hunting seals near the surface. Elena had positioned herself near the cage's viewing port with scientific observation equipment, documenting shark behavior patterns for her graduate research project. Her waterproof data collection sheets included measurements for estimating shark sizes, behavioral classifications, and environmental conditions that might influence great white activity levels. Thomas occupied the cage's opposite side, adjusting his professional camera system for the challenging lighting conditions found at depth. The massive female great white that approached their cage had been previously identified by researchers as one of Guadalupe's largest resident sharks. The specimen, nicknamed Deep Blue by the scientific team, measured approximately 16 feet in length and was estimated to weigh over 2 tons. Her scarred hide and distinctive markings indicated decades of survival in the open ocean's most challenging environments. At approximately 10:30 that morning, the giant shark began displaying increasingly aggressive behavior toward the protective cage. Rather than the typical exploratory circling patterns exhibited by most great whites, this individual launched direct attacks against the steel bars with unprecedented force. The initial impact sent violent tremors through the entire cage structure, causing both occupants to grip the internal framework for stability. Thomas found himself pressed against the cage's rear wall as the massive shark's head pushed through the front opening. The great white's enormous jaws, capable of generating bite forces exceeding 4,000 pounds per square inch, snapped repeatedly just inches from his diving mask. Only the cage's carefully calculated bar spacing prevented the shark's teeth from reaching the terrified photographer. The predator's attacks continued with relentless intensity, as she repeatedly rammed the cage with her massive bulk while attempting to force entry through any available opening. Her powerful tail strokes created strong currents within the confined space, making it difficult for the divers to maintain their positions. Elena pressed herself into the cage's corner, her scientific equipment forgotten as survival instincts took control. Blood from nearby seal-feeding activities had created a strong scent trail in the surrounding water, likely triggering the shark's extremely aggressive behavior. Great whites possessed extraordinary sensory capabilities, including the ability to detect trace amounts of blood from distances exceeding a mile. The combination of blood, struggling movement within the cage, and electrical fields generated by diving equipment may have intensified the shark's predatory responses. The attack reached its most terrifying intensity when the great white managed to insert her massive head between two of the cage's vertical bars. Her powerful jaw muscles flexed as she attempted to bite through the steel framework, her teeth scraping against the metal with a sound that Thomas would later describe as similar to grinding glass. Elena could see the shark's black eyes, perfectly adapted for hunting in deep water, focused intently on the human occupants. For nearly 10 minutes, the giant shark continued her assault on the protective cage, circling between direct attacks to assess different angles of approach. Her incredible size and strength suggested she had the physical capability to damage the cage's structural integrity if her attacks continued indefinitely. The diving operations surface crew monitored the situation through underwater cameras while preparing emergency ascent procedures. The shark's aggressive behavior finally subsided when she detected a more promising feeding opportunity elsewhere in the area. A group of seals had entered the water approximately 200 meters from the cage, providing natural prey that proved more attractive than the protected humans. Deep Blue departed as suddenly as she had arrived, disappearing into the blue depths that surrounded Guadalupe Island. Both divers ascended immediately following the encounter, their emergency ascent procedures executed flawlessly, despite the psychological trauma of the extended attack. Thomas and Elena suffered only minor scrapes and bruises from being pressed against the cage during the shark's assaults, but both required several hours to recover from the psychological impact of facing such a massive predator at close range. The surface crew aboard the Deep Blue Explorer had monitored the entire encounter through multiple underwater camera systems, recording every moment of the giant shark's unprecedented assault on the diving cage. Captain Miguel Hernandez, a 20-year veteran of Guadalupe Island shark operations, later stated that he had never witnessed such sustained aggressive behavior from a great white shark toward a protective cage. The intensity and duration of the attack exceeded anything documented in the operation's extensive video archives. Dr. Patricia Williams, the marine biologist leading the research expedition, immediately began analyzing the recorded footage to understand what factors might have triggered such extreme behavior from the normally cautious predator. Her preliminary assessment suggested that the combination of seal blood in the water, the diver's breathing equipment creating unusual electrical signatures, and the shark's possible reproductive state may have contributed to the aggressive encounter. Thomas's professional camera equipment had continued recording throughout the attack, capturing unprecedented close-up footage of a great white shark's feeding behavior and sensory responses. The dramatic imagery showing the massive predator's jaws just inches from human faces would later become some of the most viewed wildlife footage in documentary history. However, both Thomas and Elena agreed that no future diving expedition would be worth repeating such a terrifying experience. The incident prompted immediate safety protocol reviews among cage diving operators throughout Mexico's Pacific coast. Industry representatives implemented new guidelines requiring reinforced cage construction standards and enhanced emergency response procedures for situations involving unusually aggressive shark behavior. The attack also contributed to ongoing research into great white shark behavioral patterns around established feeding areas. Elena's scientific observations during the encounter provided valuable data about great white sensory responses and territorial behavior near concentrated prey sources. Her documentation of the shark's approach patterns, attack angles, and persistence levels would be incorporated into future cage design improvements and diver safety protocols. The experience, while traumatic, advanced scientific understanding of human-shark interactions in controlled environments. Recovery from the psychological impact of the encounter required several months for both participants. Thomas eventually returned to underwater photography, though he avoided further great white shark expeditions. Elena completed her marine biology degree using data collected during the Guadalupe Island expedition, focusing her research on great white behavioral modifications in response to human presence. The incident remained a defining moment in both their careers, demonstrating the thin line between scientific observation and mortal danger when studying the ocean's apex predators.